Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mania 7K World Cup 2026 here with yet another quarterfinals match for you all. This time, Canada versus Vietnam, bringing it back down for these losers bracket matches on this lovely Saturday we have here for you all. Still a couple more to go on the day. This is one of three remaining. 17th seeded Canada going up against 22nd seeded Vietnam. Two strong rosters on both sides. I am Chili Repair, joined today for the first time by a very special guest. You may all recognize him by name. Welcome to the stream, Random.
Hey yo, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the place in the world you may be at. This is probably my first time going to be commentating. Hopefully not the last, if I do it.
I'll see if I keep you around after this one. We'll make our determination. Everyone show love if not, but a very good match on our hands here today. 17 versus 22nd seed is about as close as you can get here without completely overlapping. That is to say, the round of 16 statistics do give a little bit of favorability to our Canadian friends on the higher seeded end here, especially with players like Dale and Mr. Moo bringing up the front there. Some upper level performers from late rounds on here. So expecting big things from them in this match. Knowing these rosters maybe a little bit better than I do, Random, is there anything additional that you think we might have to consider between these two? What happens today?
I do believe that it's worth considering that Canada does also have Sawdust Inhaler, a nice name, especially when it comes to Rice Picks, which is probably going to be what's going to be deciding the match towards Canada. If they can maintain their dominance over Rice Picks, they're probably going to have an easy win. Otherwise, Vietnam may as well put on a fight for them.
That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that this is maybe not going to be as much of a blowout as the performance scores lead on. Dale being sort of, as usual, true to his past performances, one of the better players overall last weekend in the round of 16. And likewise, what we saw with a lot of teams last week compared to the round of 32 is we started to ramp up in overall performance. A lot of these teams tend to be a little bit more casual about the super early rounds, and then as the 16 rolls around, they bring it up in performance a little bit, and then quarterfinals is when you really start needing to focus up, get those bans protects set up in a way that are going to favor you a little bit more heavily, and maybe lock down onto your primary skill set. So as we go through here, I don't believe we've gotten roles done yet. We're just getting into the match, but that remains to be seen. Any expectations for early protects from either side here? I know you mentioned the Rice.
Yeah, I mentioned the Rice, but I'm probably the only good guesses that I have right now is probably going to be Vietnam bans. Knowing that Canada has a relatively much stronger Rice team as opposed to Vietnam, they're probably going to be choosing to either ban some of the easiest picks for Canada, which in my opinion, those would probably be Rice 2 and, let me check, Rice 5. Nope, Rice 6. Those two are potentially going to be Vietnam's bans in order to avoid Canada from having such an easy way to gaining free points.
Okay, free points are good. Avoid those early on, and I know we've got a lot of overlapping slots in here today, and especially my eyes always sort of lock down to that EX3 pick here, especially given that, traditionally speaking in these pools, it has been one of the more difficult maps in the pool, if not the most difficult map in the pool, aside from the tiebreaker. Is that just something that's going to super heavily favor Canada in this instance, given the fact that they might have that higher skill range overall?
Not necessarily. I do not think that Canada necessarily needs to bet on wildcard picks such as EX2, EX3, or any of the sorts. I do think that for the most part, they should be fine with, let's just say, normal picks. But even then, in EX3, they may have an edge over Vietnam, basically because they are way more all-rounded, and they do gain an edge on those Rice sections, which are somewhat prevalent in EX3.
Okay, so a little bit more depth on the side of Canada here, maybe giving them an advantage, and I think that's something that we'd like to see as we progress into these quarterfinals rounds, and that sort of goes for basically every World Cup, this is kind of like that deciding round of whether or not teams are able to hang with the more difficult pools, and it starts to ramp up a little bit this week as the best of increases up and we start to get into these more long-winded matches here. It is Vietnam's Protect to start off for us today, so maybe looking to grab a couple maps that they are confident in. They had a couple of decent picks last week in the round of 16, but nothing that immediately stands out as being an instantaneous Protect here. I think they may go for something like that we saw last week. It looks like it is going to be that LN1.
That's fairly reasonable considering that long note one, especially if you are not LN savvy. Those types of releases, even though they look simple, are really difficult to consistently get accuracy on. So if Vietnam can maintain their pace on that pick, if they pick it, they should be quite well off.
So it looks good. And then there's that Rice 3 from Canada, as expected. Valkyrie Revolution going to be the strong Protect, and that's going to carry them all the way through. I imagine in this match, I'm generally interested in where the Protects get used in these matches, of course, given the fact that as we go through, we have this initial ban phase as well as the second ban phase a little bit later on in the match. It's always interesting to see whether or not teams end up gunning for those Protect picks sooner rather than later. And we have very, very seldom seen teams go for those protected picks before those second wave of bans, even when they're down in the points pretty heavily on here. So, you know, with how the early onset of this match may go, given the fact that the Rice pool has also extended this week for Canada, if that's something they're strong at, they might just want to save that for as late as possible. Likewise with Vietnam, if they have a good performance on LN1, they do have a lot of opportunities in the rest of the LN pool to maybe take a couple of extra points in there, as well as maybe that hybrid pool, just looking for one of those mid slots in hybrid 2.
I do think that hybrid, probably for Vietnam, hybrid 1 is going to be a safer choice than hybrid 2 if they want to throw Canada off guard. Hybrid 2 is probably a little bit easier when it comes to its Rice parts, which again, Canada would take an edge out of them. Other than that, I do personally think that Vietnam may want to use that Protect earlier rather than later if they want to gain some advantage over the vast quantity of Rice picks that currently favor Canada.
And there's that Rice 4 banned out there, and I don't believe that was Canada's. I don't believe that was Vietnam's ban. That was Canada's ban. I think they misinterpreted. Yeah. So, well, Rice 4 ban seeming to come out from Vietnam. I don't think anything Canada does is going to change that. And Canada clearly afraid of that LN pool here. Going to get rid of Goodbye Sengen.
That's surprising. I was expecting LN4 to be banned over LN3. At least from when I was playtesting things. For a team that's not really good at long notes, LN4 seems to be a harder choice overall, just because it literally has everything.
Okay, so maybe the variability just going to be too tiring for Canada, that sort of like solo skill set focused one, and maybe that's just, in my opinion, when we generally see bans come out like that, I feel like it's just because Canada wants to kind of hone in on that strong skill set, maybe look for consistency in this match today, maybe just go for those accuracy-focused maps where they're going to be able to maintain that distance early on, where Vietnam may potentially find a couple of breaks. And if Vietnam is even moderately favored towards the LN pool, that's probably a smarter ban than going towards the hybrid or EXs, which may end up just favoring the team who's having a better day.
Yeah, I do think that it's something similar as to why EX3 is probably not going to be baked, banned, or protected for that matter. Basically because, again, Vietnam not being as strong of a team at long notes either, Canada probably guessed that they are not going to be picking LN4 themselves. It would be suicidal at that point.
Not good in the early onset of a match, I'll tell you that much. And then it looks like opening pick for Vietnam going to be that LN2. So very, very obviously going to go for this LN pool heavily in this match. They've only got 2 maps remaining in it, though. The stronger of the two going to be the Hanatan pick here in, and on the longer side as well.
It's on the longer, and definitely you have to keep the focus on this map. It seems easy, but it's consistently difficult. If you lose focus for just a single bit, you're just going to be in a wall of trouble.
not fun early on. Looking for a strong start from both of our teams here. I think that's always your worry when you go into these early picks, I think, is are we going to make a mistake? Are we going to accidentally pick something that the other team is good at? And it's sort of a hurdle that you have to jump over if you are these teams in these early slots here. And again, I do think these more, how would I put this pick? More coordination-focused LN pick is definitely something that I would want to start off with, especially if I think I'm the stronger LN team, just with these tricky patterns.
It's a good way to test the waters, yeah, either way. Just like starting out the match, seeing if Vietnam can really bet on those long note picks, and if they can't, they will need to change their strategy. And better do that at the very beginning rather than midway through.
Yeah, it's got that good breadth of skill sets represented for LNs, but it doesn't overlap too much with that LN one, where it's really just more about the timing and the releases. But it's a strong start for both sides right now. A little bit lower accuracy on the side of Vietnam, maybe just getting a slow swing into things, but no early misses, not too many mistimed releases here. Hitori, however, is going to find the first misread there. Let's go of one of those left-hand sides a little bit too early. So early advantage to Canada, but plenty of time left and a very small score margin with the act differences.
Really unfortunate considering that the courses are going to be basically the same style of patterning, just like way more difficult when it comes to coordination. So hopefully that was a fluke and not what we're going to be seeing in the course as well.
Oh, there goes Moo, though. So he does get caught out by that rhythm switch, actually, between these sections. So that's going to be a break in favor of Vietnam. It's certainly going to keep these scores closer in line, especially with the accuracy difference on Mr. Moo. That 99.5 is doing some serious damage. However, Hitori building back up to that 99.3. Hippie Cat a little bit above Live Cat at the bottom there. I didn't even notice the names matching up. And that's basically just the difference of Mr. Moo's releases right now, making such a difference to the score.
Right now, the winner of the pick is going to be dictated by whose team is going to maintain their consistency, which, as I was speaking about consistency, LiveCat finds their first miss. Making the only full clear right now being held by Pipicat, and if they can manage to hold that, they probably will get themselves the first point of match.
Yeah, that's a rough break for Live Cat too. That was a bit more of a dirty miss, if I can put it that way. That 0.25 to 0.3% accuracy drop did a lot more damage than the miss itself, of course. And again, coupled with the higher accuracy from Mr. Moo, just that one very, very clean break from them early on. Hitori has recovered, and Mr. Moo does find a miss. So once again, Vietnam is like sort of having the door open for them, actually, as Pipicat finds a break too. That is going to open the door a heck of a lot wider now. Without that big miss from Live Cat, this might have been a prime opportunity for Vietnam to claw back the score lead. Unfortunately, with that extra miss on the bottom and the accuracy drop, it's going to happen a lot more slowly than they want.
The accuracy drop is definitely being part of why Vietnam hasn't gotten the lead yet. If they can manage to keep that consistency, it's probably not going to be enough. Canada does need to find a miss. Otherwise, I'm impressed by Hitori's comeback from the very beginning.
It was a decently clean miss. I think Mr. Moo's was too, but again, that second break almost giving it over, and it really is just the difference of Live Cat's accuracy right now, 0.5% lower than the next closest player, and even then against Pippy Cat with that combo at the bottom, it just wasn't going to be enough. The overall team performance on Canada going to bring them through on this first pick. Again, close, you can see everyone basically at that same score line. It really is just that 98% that does too much damage in these early onset LN picks.
That was way closer than I expected. I don't think that Vietnam is going to be discouraged from losing their protect because of that. I do think that they still have a fighting chance.
Immediate roster switch for Canada, so we are just gonna get the pick strategy completely flipped on Vietnam's head right now. And again, the big difference on this past map here was just that top end on Canada. Having a player like Mr. Moo, who is really confident at a very broad range of skill sets, even with the two breaks, just being able to hit those release timings well, very consistently, as well as having that strong coordination, being able to sort of maneuver through those shield patterns very well and confidently is a big advantage as these pools start to get harder. And Canada going to bring it straight up to Rice 1, so we are just kicking the BPM the complete opposite way now, up from 90.
Do you believe that I do want to see how Vietnam unfolds in the first Rice pick of the match, especially if something as tricky as some of the patterns we can find in this map are going to be. It is not necessarily, well, it's definitely not the hardest Rice map of the pool, I can tell you that already, but it does have certain patterns that if you're not like technically savvy on how to handle them, especially broken streams, that's not going to bode well for any of the other technical picks, even the hybrid picks, because there's a lot of similar instances of the pool. So it's going to be basically a test for Vietnam to see if they can handle Canada's, for now, very good Rice performance.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think it just has to do at this point with, you know, maybe not necessarily even being the hardest map in the pool, but being one of the higher BPM maps in the pool and traditionally being favored towards more streamy-based patterns in this Rice 1, just that accuracy confidence that Canada has overall on the faster streams, maybe giving them that confidence in here, especially having that skill cap?
The thing with this particular map is that its difficulty doesn't mainly come from its speed, it mostly comes from the structure of the streams found in it. There's two very distinct parts, one with like very easy to read streams, and then the broken streams in between. Besides being able to hit those like with the speed that's required, you need to be very, very good coordinating your fingers. Otherwise, it's really easy to drop at least a miss or two on them, and they are found all throughout the map. So I would dare to say that if you're better at tech than speed, you're probably going to have a better time on this particular map.
Well, we'll see who has the better time overall. We've got Dale swapping in here for Canada, as well as Sawdust Inhaler, and one switch over there for Vietnam, bringing in Coke. So we've got a couple swaps here as we switch skill sets up. LiveCat going to be the only maintaining player from the previous map, and we break into it a little bit shorter, a lot higher BPM, and a completely different style here. Hopefully doesn't throw the players off too much. Your early act drop here and there for Vietnam, maybe a little bit more than you'd like to see in the easy intro to a Rice pick here, but it's really not going to affect anything in the long run, as the Ki is going to be the big difference here. We go.
Yeah, like for the most part, streams should be easy enough. Sai was saying that Coach just missed on a fairly easy place. Hopefully that's, again, just a fluke.
Well, early misses, early first map of the weekend for Coke as well. So maybe just getting into the swing of things. Unfortunately, it's not going to put them off to a great start. Luckily, Dale finding a break there is going to give them a bit of a hand. But again, it's going to come down to the accuracy. And we sort of talked about the formulation of these streams and how they're laid out is going to be where the accuracy troubles are going to come from. And it looks like Coke being, luckily for Vietnam, the only player who hasn't been able to navigate this first Ki super well. LiveCat doing very, very strong, 99.6%. Does find a miss, though, and that's not going to be good for them.
Yeah, they should have retained as much accuracy as possible for the ending, because it's going to be basically the same, just a little bit harder. And as we can see, it's really... If you do expect the burst coming, and if you do expect the broken streams from just like appearing, it's fairly easy to hit patterns. But again, if you cannot keep up with the speed, it's going to be really difficult to do so.
No, and if there's someone keeping up with the speed right now, Sawdust Inhaler #1 in the lobby by a pretty respectable margin, actually. The only full still standing. Dale doing pretty well for themselves on the recovery. Likewise with Coke, again, a very early fluke miss as we sort of brought it down to, but LiveCat going to be the one to continue to struggle in holding these extended combos here. Even though they are clean breaks, you just cannot afford this many misses, and you can see that scoreline very deeply reflecting that as Sawdust Inhaler just absolutely annihilates that Rice 1 pick for Canada.
Kudos to Sawdust Inhaler. The final burst keeping up, the accuracy in the final like section is incredible for a pick like that. Like being able to consistently getting good accuracy throughout it was amazing performance from their part.
That is quite a statement to make for your first map of the match. Putting up a 990 in map 1 of the quarterfinals for yourself is a statement start, to say the least, and a strong slot very clearly for Canada. So we are looking for big things from them in the remainder of this match as the first 2 picks go their way. And Vietnam now looks to try and get on the board. It is 1 consolidated breakpoint. It's not the end of the world. We are, of course, finally in the extended best of 11 now. So we do have those 6 points to win, which gives Vietnam an extra slot to sort of make things work here as they try and navigate their second pick. I doubt they're going to go back in for the LN pool immediately.
Honestly, probably they're going to try with hybrid pick first, and then they're going to use their protect. I think that's going to be their plan, or at least that should probably be their plan. They shouldn't waste their protect right now.
Yeah, this is sort of an interesting slot because you really have to consider the mental status of the lower seeded team at this venture in the match, right? Because when you look at it on paper, it's very early on. It's only 2-0 out of 6 total points for Canada. They still need 3 more to get to match point, but it is a consolidated breakpoint, and it was a close one at that, which can sometimes be a little demotivating if your opening pick in a pool that you thought was pretty strongly favored towards you doesn't go your way. And to see the mentality of these teams where are they composed as they go into these? Do they go in early? Has yet to be seen. And like you mentioned, Vietnam is going to go in for that hybrid pick first, so they're going to maintain that composure. They're going to keep their picking strategy. The real question is, depending on if this map goes their way or not, do they use their protect after this, or do they maybe continue on and hold that protect out as long as possible until maybe we get closer to that point of no return? Because if they win this map, it's only 1 point down for them, and they just need to get a single break point back, and that's really not a dangerous situation, even though it may look like it is an uphill battle.
The problem right now is that they don't have many options. Canada probably already knows that Vietnam's picks are somewhat limited, and they already are thinking on how to play around that. Vietnam really does need to play their cards right and win them at that. Otherwise, they are going to be following Canada's footsteps rather than leading themselves. But I do think hybrid one was the wise choice here.
Yeah, I mean, pretty spot on. They went right in for it. They didn't actually have to think about it for too long otherwise. I do think that I do worry a little bit about some of the more tricky patterns and some of the bursts on this, just because that seemed to be where Vietnam struggled on the rice pick. You know, there are a couple chord stream sections in this map. I think most of this is like rice patterns from what I've seen, so this could really go either way.
I think Vice difficulty is not going to play that big a part. Like, yes, there's a key component in Vice difficulty in the map, but I do believe that the brunt of set difficulty comes from being able to hold the long notes while playing those chord streams, because even though they appear to be simple, you still need a certain level of finger coordination that you can only get by playing Rice. So I do believe that Vietnam knows that Canada would need to risk at, like, you know, getting good accuracy versus like managing to hit those patterns and not getting misses in between. Which I do believe that's going to be what's going to be deciding this point.
And we'll see. People are getting a little stuck up on this one here. Hopefully going to get them in relatively soon. If this does go the way of Vietnam, there are a couple of picks that potentially open up in the later onset of this match here. So I believe that Hybrid 3 was still left open for the remainder of this match, and that may potentially be something that Vietnam can look towards. It is a moderately LN-focused pick. It does have a lot of technical patterns in it, and it really does sort of test a big range of skill sets with your overall skill ceiling. So it's a dangerous one, but if push comes to shove, I do think Vietnam could potentially look that way a little bit.
All in all, they could, although seeing Canada's, especially Mr. Muno's performance on LN picks, and especially hybrid ones, I do believe that Canada would still have an advantage over that. It would be risky, but the fact that Hybrid 3 still remains a technical pick for the most part is probably not going to play towards Vietnam's advantage.
Well, the technical picks have been interesting thus far in this match. We haven't seen too many super technically focused picks in here yet, if any, so it really is a lot to be said about a lot of those more techy focused maps. And it's going to be a surprise to see who sort of digs into it first. It seems to be that Canada is maybe the one that's leaning into it a little bit more heavily as we get our second attempt at getting this map started here. I think just maybe some connection issues on the side of Vietnam that we've worked through, and now we are back in. Seems like everyone has loaded up. 2 minutes and 13 seconds for Blaze's assault here. Vietnam really, really needs to get a point on the board here. Yet another break point would be, that starts to get to the danger zone there. That's a 3-0 for Canada and a potential to consolidate. So big turning point for motivation and on paper for Vietnam here.
I also think that it's going to be a very good litmus test for Vietnam in particular, especially because the long no difficulty of this pick will increase, not drastically, but significantly by around the 70% mark. I do believe that Vietnam sees themselves as the stronger matchup at this point, that they may want to use the Protect on their next chance that they get to. But all in all players seem to be doing quite good.
Well, it's holding strong, and yeah, Vietnam needs to be careful about that Protect, because there's sort of a fine line for it where if you hold it for too long and you continue not win your picks, it starts to push you away from picking your Protect map because you're kind of uncertain of everything. But you also don't want to pick it too early and use a pick that you're super confident on when you might need a momentum changer. Luckily for Vietnam, we did see a miss come out of Dale there, building up into this next PI section here. So we do have some advantage as Vietnam trades 1 miss for 2, but Coke is going to find another break to give that score lead back over to Canada. It's going to be so close through this techie section here, and it's really going to be about who drops any more accuracy. Coke did take the biggest hit there, and Canada's maintaining a clean miss for Dale and Mr. Moo as we make it through into this next PI here, and it's going to stay Canada favored unless we see another miss.
Unfortunately, Coke wasn't able to get such a huge accolade while Vietnam still had their 2 FCs. And now Canada is going back because both of their misses were quite clean. If they can find the consistency that they need, they may back the point. But unfortunately, Mr. Moo is missing at the very end. Hopefully, they can stop doing so. Vietnam's building their accuracy back up.
That's a big set of misses for Mr. Moo. That's 4 now.
It keeps going.
Oh, it was 1 miss for Coke in the middle, too. That would have been the difference maker to bring this over to Vietnam. One more break from Mr. Moo at the ending could potentially give a little bit, but the ACK is too much of a difference. Dale finds a miss, and I think it's just barely too late.
It's way too late. Yeah, that's so close.
Oh, it was 1 traded break in that middle section from Coke and Mr. Moo that could potentially have made the difference. Mr. Moo was completely collapsing in that ending Ki there. It was dragging on forever, and Vietnam just barely misses out on that pick, and now we are sort of in the scenario where Vietnam needs to question the strategy. We do have another set of bans coming up after this pick here, so that'll be the halfway point through the match, and that's going to be sort of the turning point there. If Canada is able to consolidate this before the second set of bans, it may not look too good for Vietnam as that last LN map is eliminated.
As expected. They wouldn't want to play that.
Oh, that's their pick. Yes.
Oh, is it their pick?
Oh, that's Canada's pick.
Wow.
Huh.
I am surprised. They're either overconfident or they just think that they actually have an edge over Vietnam, or that Vietnam's probably not going to do a good job at it. All in all, this is surprising nevertheless.
I mean, Canada picking an inverse reading LN map was not on my docket of things I was expecting to see today, so I don't really know what to think.
The thing with this map is that it literally contains every other LN skill set. Like, it has LN walls, has LN inverse, may as well have. It has a lot of LN coordination parts on its in-betweens, and even its lighter segments do certainly require some LN release coordination as well. So it has every LN component. So seeing a team that's not really good at that, picking something that literally requires the entire skill set in order to perform well, is surprising. I think that would be the best way to describe it.
This might just be a bold move from Canada. In my mind, you're up 3 points. 2 of those are break points. So this is a true 3-0 for Canada right now. And you sort of pick at this point, one of the last maps in the LN pool that isn't protected by the opposing team. And if you win this, that's beyond a statement pick right there. That basically means that, Canada's putting the nail in the coffin. They're saying we can win every map that you are good at. Whatever you can do, we can do it better, and just absolutely try and crush out the mental of Vietnam before that second set of bans even comes through. And that's sort of when you have to wonder, does Vietnam start questioning their protect at that point? Where do they look next in the pool? This is a bold move for Canada if it works out for them. If it doesn't work out for them, it could potentially mean a couple of good picks for Vietnam, as we see both teams with some struggles on this map. Definitely the hardest LN map we've seen by quite a large margin.
Yeah, besides the EX2, this is by far the hardest long node map of the pool, period. Like, again, has everything, and it just doubles its difficulty twofold. So, as you said before, maybe the move is bold, but Canada can spare the point. Even if they lose, they still have a lot of options. They know that they've got themselves rid of a long node pick in the pool, and they know that they can fall back to rice picks if it need be. So hopefully it works in their favor. Otherwise, they will also have to change their strategy a little bit.
Yeah, I think the important thing to note is that, again, I sort of mentioned it in passing, but this is a true 3-0 for Canada, and true 3-0 meaning this is 2 break points to 1 of Canada's points. So this is unrecoverable 3-0 for Vietnam at the current status, because they need 2 breakpoints back. Even if Canada let this map slip away, Vietnam would still need yet another pick, which means that Canada would basically just be able to go, oops, we made a mistake. Let's bring back our picking strategy and continue to close this match out, which is why this is such a tough point for them. Luckily, Vietnam struggling just as much as Canada is right now. I mean, they have a slight edge on the fact that Mr. Mu is holding up higher accuracy right now, but nobody is able to hold a consistent combo through these key eye sections. These release timings, these inverses are just so difficult to be consistent at and hold through. And both teams have had a couple sections of decent combo, but the time is running out, and this score lead is just gunning towards Canada.
Yeah, these rules are just unforgiving. No matter how good at long nodes you are, you still have to focus 100% if you want to do well at this. Just the littlest of slip up can just mean 5 more misses if you do not have a clean one.
That's a tough one for Vietnam there, and an unfortunate score line now for them. At a 4-0 for Canada, 2 consolidated break points on the board with not a 1 to speak of for the blue team. As we roll into the second set of bans here, that's 1 more map for Canada in order to force that match point. And for Vietnam, to me, that means pick the protects now. You've got to go for that LN1, regardless of whether or not you think you can win an LN map at this venture in the match now. You have to pick the protect map. Otherwise, what was the point of protecting it? I think they just have to steal themselves and go in. It's going to be that EX2 banned out for Canada, and Vietnam potentially just going to look to ban out another one of these rice picks at this point, but there's really not a whole lot. They're going to have to hope for a bit of a miracle here.
Either one of the tag ones or Vice 2. Quite a bold ban from Canada, considering that their LN4 strategy worked. I did expect that if it worked, that they would try to do so again with EX2 as somewhat of a wildcard pick, considering that it's just the same thing, but if LN4 was 2-fold, it's 3-fold or even times 4 in terms of difficulty compared to other LN picks. Probably they just want to play it safe after probably getting the hardest point out of the match. And as expected, Vietnam did ban another rice pick, one of the technical ones at that, and probably the hardest of the 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's that kind of wild card pick that we sort of discussed earlier, and we were wondering who was gonna break into the tech-based maps earlier. And Well, Vietnam broke into them by banning one of them, but that's basically,
Yeah.
it's expected, I think, at this venture. You've got to get rid of the technically difficult picks. You've got to get rid of the picks that have an unpredictable element to them, because all you need if you're on Vietnam right now is some semblance of consistency. And when you've got those difficult tech picks with the burst and the hard rice patterns, the mini jacks, especially on a pick like Rice 6, you've got to get rid of that as soon as possible in order to make sure that Canada can't capitalize on bringing you into a tough area. So this is the time for Vietnam, and there it is. It's the LN1 pick. I was really hoping they were going to go for this. I'm always sad for teams that end up not going for their protected pick, because it means that they've been so thrown off their rhythm that they don't think they can pick their confident maps anymore, and that's always a bad mental space to be in a high stakes match like this. So I'm glad Vietnam has, despite their shortcomings in this match in terms of the points they've come up on, have sort of steeled their picking strategy. They went for the hybrid when you thought they were going to go for the hybrid. They came back for the protect pick when they needed to, right when Canada's on the verge of getting that match point. So it's a really, really good slot for them to try and pick up now. And if it can get the momentum, then even better. More power to them.
I do think that overall the picking strategy for Vietnam has been proper, all things considered. The only issue, which again I mentioned in passing before, is that the problem with that is that it becomes predictable. If your team becomes predictable with your picks, it's really, really easy to play around that. And I don't think that plays on Vietnam's advantage, or at least it has not played in their advantage during this match.
Yeah, that's kind of the question, but there's also a fine line, I think, that you ride between predictability and being able to just win your own picks too, because I think it says a lot about the strength of your team. If you're able to pick into the picks that everyone knows that you're confident at, you're a strong LN player, you're going to pick all the LN maps. If you still win all of those, it does make a pretty bold statement about your confidence and consistency across your skill set. So if, unfortunately, Vietnam has not really caught that break on the LN map so far, so we can't sort of hold them in the same regard, but it is, something to be worthy of later on. And likewise, Canada's revered for their rice picking ability. Vietnam might just have the advantage on some of these LNs, even if they've had slip-ups. And luckily for them, Canada going to be the first one to find a break on LN1, so already looking in their favor. That's the first time Vietnam has had a lead on a pick this match.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. This is the first time that we see the blue scoreline go to the right. Unfortunately, Dale cannot keep up, and Mr. Mu found the first miss. If Vietnam can keep up with their consistency, they may back this pick. It's worth noting that the difficulty of this map is not really going to increase by a lot. The courses are definitely, well, if you can even call them courses, are going to be the hardest section. Not really because they are more technically demanding, but rather because they are denser, so there's a lot more overlapping releases. Otherwise, everything else should work on Vietnam's favor if they can play it as they have been playing right now.
And I like it. If the theme of this map is consistency and predictability, and Canada is finding breaks and Vietnam was able to make it through the first PI halfway through the map here, that speaks volumes about what they're going to be able to hopefully maintain into the second point here. And I would absolutely love to see Vietnam get a point on the board here, especially on their protect pick. I think regardless of what the outcome of this match is, to win at least your protect shows that you know what you're good at, you know where your strong points lie, and it's potentially something to work on for next year for Vietnam. If you're already confident in your strategy, then it's really just a question of getting the practice in, getting the time in, and just coming back even more confident next year. And yet another additional break from Canada, from Dale, going to throw this score further in favor of Vietnam, and that's 20k with about a sixth of the map left to go, and I'd say that's all but said and done.
Yeah, I don't think that Vietnam, how they've been performing so far during this point, I don't think they're going to find a break. Again, this is fairly consistent difficulty-wise. It's not really going to change widely. There are no difficulty spikes, and so far, Vietnam has been doing fine in that regard.
A double FC for Vietnam would be pretty cool into the ending here, at the expense of getting myself killed by an angry mob at saying that before the map ends.
Nah, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. What are the chances? What are the chances?
No Xarius misses at the ending, please. No Xarius miss. Thank you, Vietnam. Okay.
Unfortunate. Oh well.
Good work, Vietnam. Accuracy respectable from both teams. Actually, Canada did a great job of maintaining that accuracy. Just the combo breaks in the middle, giving up way too much.
It's really easy to miss if you hold a node for like more than a second. The releases are so tight.
That is, yeah, I mean, that is just a very, very close one. And honestly, for Vietnam, a double FC on their first point of the match, that has aura. I'm just going to say it. That's got aura.
I mean, it does show that Vietnam came in to the match with a strategy, with a picking strategy, with a protect strategy, and I mean, they've used it well. It has definitely worked for that point. That was their plan all along.
I love it. I love it from them. They picked they picked their protect exactly when they needed to. It was the last match of the LN pool after having it banned, losing the other two, and again, such a sad LN4. I mean, 1.2k is as close as you ever hope for. Unfortunately, not going their way. This could be a very different match if they were able to sneak that one out, but the road falls to Canada.
But even then, the first big long road too was also quite close, all things considered. So like, it's not as much of a stomp as it seems like because of the scoreline. Vietnam has been putting on a fight, even though it kind of doesn't make it seem like it. It's also worth considering that.
Yeah, it's definitely been a close match. I mean, we've had, you know, Orange was Vietnam's first pick. They only lost it by 12.8k. Blaze's Assault, 1.2k. And then they won their third pick on the board with that last one. So, you know, unfortunately, they're 1-3 on wins right now, but a combined score difference on their picks of 14k total, that's respectable. I mean, is it the closest we've ever seen? No, but across 3 picks. But that's still very respectable and could absolutely have gone a different way if they found a couple more confident act breaks or misses throughout there. Now, that does leave a lot to be said about Canada's score difference on their 2 picks that they've won thus far have been 44k on both of them. So Vietnam finding unfortunate losses on their picks. Meanwhile, Canada is just absolutely running through their maps with absolute confidence. It says a lot about what Canada came to do here in the quarterfinals. They came to make a statement on their own maps. They show that they're confident, and they're going to try and do it again right here on Revolution.
They're confident, but maybe picking fast score stream rather than dense score stream may play against their favor. Because between the two, overall the hardest one is dense score stream, Rise 2. So them picking Rise 3 is weird, but probably makes sense considering that they won Rise 1 and Rise 3 is basically speed court stream. There's no other way to describe it. Probably they are hinging on the fact that Vietnam didn't have the best of speed skills, and unfortunately for Vietnam's I was speaking, Leifcat finds the first miss, while Canada's accuracy is top notch. Never mind.
Well, there it goes. Couple breaks from both sides, and unfortunately a heck of a lot more from Vietnam as Sawdust Inhaler does it again. We saw this on the Rice 1 pick, and, you know, maybe that was sort of their gambit on the Rice 3. We know we're confident in the higher BPM maps, the more fast-based picks. This is the highest BPM map we've seen picked since Rice 1. It's the second highest BPM map in the entire pool. And if Sawdust Inhaler is feeling good on Rice 1, then heck yeah, let's pick Rice 3. And he's just holding on to it so well, 99.85. Even 99.5 from Dale here as Vietnam struggles to get back above 99 on both players.
Well, unfortunately, Sawdust Inhaler won't see the full clear, but even then, that miss was extremely clear and their curse is still up. Fairly easy point for the Canadians so far.
Yeah, this has been very straightforward going on here as we approach that 5-1 point. Speaking of a 5-1 scoreline, Venezuela just won their last pick on the B stream against Sweden, so a 6-1 win for Venezuela on the B stream. And, well, in the current status of this match, Canada may be looking for the same scoreline if Vietnam can't continue their run. You know, I don't think Vietnam is going to be too demoralized by losing a very strong Canada Rice pick here, but gonna go in for their next one here. Coke thinks the match is over. It's not. Coke, you have one more map.
They probably they're just congratulating Solace Inhaler's performance, which fair, to be honest.
That was a good performance again. Sawdust Inhaler, such a strong Rice player overall.
Now, the question is, what will Vietnam do? They use their Protect, they use their first Hybrid Wildcard. What are the chances that they go for Hybrid 2, considering that Hybrid 1 didn't go that bad for them, all things considered? Oh, they're going with the X3. That's not the kind of hybrid I was expecting.
Huh.
Well, remember that we said at the start that they were probably not going to be picking EX3 because it's probably out of the range of both teams.
Yeah.
So about that.
Well, if the goal is to pick a fun map at the end of the match, I mean,
we may not have
it's a hybrid. It's like a hybrid EX pick, so it might work.
We may not have the full tiebreaker, unfortunately, but hey, this is the mini tiebreaker, so can it be considered the same thing? Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe. I would absolutely love to see Seisho no hacking this weekend, but in the current status of these matches, you know, you don't actually... You hope that you have some close matches in the quarterfinals, but we are sort of still in the round where matches do tend to be high seed versus low seed matchups as you sort of make it through the round of 16 into the teams that, you know, kind of get cut out there. And it's really been some very strong performances from the higher seeded teams this weekend. We haven't had a single upset yet this weekend with our losers bracket. Australia beating Mexico, Hong Kong beat New Zealand, Spain beat Taiwan, Venezuela just beat Sweden, Russia beat Portugal, Germany beat Ireland, and we're very, very clearly on the way for Canada looking for their win against Vietnam, which basically just leaves Poland, France. Even on the winners bracket, China 6-0 over Peru with only a 3-seed difference there. So the higher seeded and stronger teams very, very much making their skill cap known in the quarterfinals so far.
Yeah, and then you would expect matches like this, which, you know, the seeds are not really that far apart, to be those close matches, but we are not really seeing that either way, which is unfortunate.
Well, it's a good way of going in, and to be honest, it doesn't matter who you think's going to win or who you think's going to lose. You can always go through and buy a banner for your favorite team to support them in the tournament. Doesn't matter if they're eliminated. Doesn't matter if they're in the grand finals weekend, they get cut out in quarters or round of 32. You can show your support for your favorite countries heading on over to the web store. Contributions directly go to support our players, our staff. The prize pools especially is where that goes for. So you are directly supporting the players.
That ad hoc segue into the banner was really clean, all things considered.
I might be the GOAT. I might be the GOAT. No, as we trying to burn time at the start of the Luminous era here, a very, very slow intro to this map, and it kicks up fast. I love Lauer songs. I am such a big Lauer fan. They're so consistently good with all of their tracks.
They're really clean, and I do think that this map makes it justice. Like, even outside of being a tournament map, it's like one of my favorites from the pool.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Luminous Era is great too, as we sort of get into the early onset here, seeing some struggles from both sides here. Sawdust Inhaler caught a bit of a break on one of the releases on an LN. Hitori had a misread at the start. Pretty clean for LiveCat and Mr. Moo. It is the accuracy once again is favored for Canada, as LiveCat and Hitori find breaks there. That is not going to be super good for them. Luckily, Canada gonna creep that door open just a little bit with a double break. And another one from Mr. Moo.
Other one. Yeah, but so long they keep up with the accuracy, I think they should be fine, regardless of how many misses they get. Because so far they've been doing quite well all throughout the match. Like, they've been having a lot of misses, but the accuracy that they had, like, more than made up for them.
This is basically going to be who holds their nerve a little bit better, and right now Canada is just looking too confident on this one to hold through, and it's going to be a very, very strong performance from them throughout the entire match. We've seen them, regardless of how close the scoreline has been, regardless of where it's looked overall, it has just been accuracy lead after accuracy lead for Canada on these picks here, and that's where the score difference has been coming from early on here. It's a big part of the reason that Vietnam has really not been able to break through this armor for them, is because of these high to mid 99s across every single slot. Even with the breaks, they're so clean. So
far, so good. I do think that this is probably this whole entire map and how we're seeing both teams playing it is probably a summary of how the entire match has been going. Canada is doing more than well on every difficult ice section that this map has to offer, whereas Vietnam is struggling in those. And the opposite goes for the long note parts. Vietnam is finding more consistency throughout the long note parts, as opposed to Canada, even though Canada, throughout both sections, have been able to maintain the best accuracy of the two.
Yeah, this is pretty even across the board now, regardless. That is not going to favor Vietnam very heavily. Even is not what you want to see with a sixth of the map to go in a 25,000 score lead for your opponent. LiveCat is putting up a pretty decent combo right now. Unfortunately, as long as Hitori continues to find misses to trade these ones out on Canada here, it's not going to do anything. And yet another break from them. That 97 from Hitori and double mid to high 98s for Canada. As Sawdust Inhaler really struggles with these stair patterns at the ending here, but still a plenty big score lead for Canada.
I wouldn't blame them for that. If you're not prepared for those, and I'm going to guess that Vietnam didn't really expect to be playing this big, it's probably more, as you said before, last day check where to see this map being played. It does make sense for those patterns to feel tricky. And these long note walls are proving to be difficult for all players.
Yeah, this map's just hard. There's no way to go about it. A tough map, a map that we didn't really think either team would dig into, but Vietnam went for it. Unfortunately, doesn't work out for them, and Canada takes the win 6-1 to move on to the next round of the losers bracket. That's right, for all you Canada fans, they're in the clear for now, but only until 15 UTC tomorrow, where they get to face off against Germany, the 14th seed. So Canada going to be the underdogs in that match coming in.
I do think that that's probably going to be one of the closest matches we're going to be seeing next week. So I would suggest you guys hop in, especially if you've liked Canada's performance thus far.
Going to be exciting. Plenty of matches left to go for the weekend. Congratulations to Canada. Commiserations to Vietnam, who will be eliminated from the tournament after this round. We thank you for coming out once again. Always a pleasure to see them in the MWC as we bid them farewell until next year. Yet again, Canada goes off to face against Germany. We've got one more lower bracket match for you all this weekend, coming up on Saturday, 17:30 UTC. So in approximately 30 minutes from now, we will have Poland versus France, which will decide the remainder of our potential matches down in the losers bracket here, leaving us with all three of the upper winners bracket matches. And then, of course, those four remaining losers bracket matches as Australia awaits their opponent up there. A good match overall.
We have quite a good set of matches coming, well, in like a few hours, in a couple of hours, and tomorrow. So I would suggest you guys hop in on some of them.
Great setup. All the matches up on your screen now. Poland, France, South Korea versus the United States, Philippines versus Thailand, Indonesia, Japan, and to kick off the end of the weekend, Hong Kong versus Spain. So plenty left to go. One more today, a bunch more on Sunday. Remember, in the meantime, go check out those banners. Go support your favorite teams. Thank you once again all for being here for these Saturday matches. It's been a pleasure to bring these all to you as usual. Don't miss the rest of the matches we've got this weekend. Thank you for joining me for your first cast ever this afternoon, Random. And we will see you all in 30 minutes for Poland, France.
Enjoy your weekend, guys.
Suddenly the deepness can't get through. Realize I fall along with you, and you're looking into cold green eyes. Ooh. can't get through. Realize I fall along with you, and we're looking into cold